Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
Want to appreciate everyone at the end of the year for listening in. If you ever have any questions, concerns, comments, litigations, issues, proposals, or any other theories, conjectures, or interjections, by all means, please reach out to us on our Twitter handle at
ITLBcast.
And that's Twitter, and our Reddit handle is ITLBcast also.
Yeah, ITLB.
ITLB. I still screw that up. It's been 6 months.
Yeah.
And then also we have our email, which ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, if you have an opportunity on the 5,000 different listening platforms that are out there, if you can please give us a like or a review or shoot us a question there, by all means, please do it.
Absolutely.
So as we were preparing today, me and Jesse were sitting here. We had like 10 different things we were going to talk about, and we're kind of bouncing them around and just kind of joking and saying, well, I wonder what the most glorious dumpster fire that any of us have ever responded to, or more importantly, read in the subreddit /firefighting of what it has to offer today. And that's what our entire little cast is going to be about today. Is we're just going to sort by, at least I am, I'm sorting by new.
Yeah.
And the very first one I have is ways to show activeness in the department. Jesse, what do you think? How do you show activeness in your department? And I didn't read the subtext on this. I don't know if it's a career or volunteer question, but
Well, and it looks to me like it's a volunteer question, and I think that's a deep subject, because there's a lot of things. Like, is the guy that comes every day and ices the trucks every morning before he goes to work and makes sure the station's swept out, but he works 12 hours after that and doesn't really make any calls, is he not active?
Yeah, this is, at the end of the day, to me, is always kind of like a universal new guy versus old guy discussion. You have your old timers sitting around the table, and at face value, they have sat there for the last 20 years and just talked. Is that activeness on the department? Go to the other side of that, particularly for us, because we have a pension and we have requirements for that pension. And when you have the full varying of people across the board in their ability to participate in the organization, is that the sole way to figure out how active someone is on the department? I think for me, the older I get and the more that I spend trying to grow, build, develop the organization, that for me, your activeness on the organization does not necessarily mean how many calls you went to.
Yeah, and calls are important. That's not to say that the calls aren't important. Training is important. All these things are important, but you use people to their strengths, right?
Right.
And so, somebody may not be super beneficial on a fire scene, but they may have tremendous benefit in record keeping or something like that. Is their contribution not worthy of, say, the pension? And I'm not saying that you bend all the rules all the time for every individual, because that's idiotic in a sense, but maybe some different categories of membership, some different ways of looking at some of that stuff.
I'll give you a different one. We just recently had a assistant chief from a very large department in the Metroplex join, and he very eloquently stated that he's spent enough time on a truck, and the thing that he's actually interested in is helping in training. So let's fast forward 5 years. Let's say that he's as involved in training 5 years from now as he has been, but never made a call. Is there actually a loss here?
Yeah.
No. I would argue that all you've done is managed to make your department exceedingly stronger. Because particularly because of the size of our academies, you're pumping out 10 to 25 new members every year that are being fortified with instructors that have all done this for longer than 25 and up to 40 years of experience. So your lead instructors in the program are over 150 years of total experience, but they don't make any calls. I mean, arguably at that point, how are you any different from a career department?
Yeah. So I'm reading through some of these posts in this subreddit and this conversation, and you've got a general consensus of guys that are saying, between 30 and 20% of the calls and 20 and 30% of the trainings, and as what their departments are seeing as requirement. And that's kind of in line with where we're 25% of our declared emergencies and 40% of our training, because we put a little heavier weight on that, right?
Right.
That seems to be the kind of consensus of the standard. There is some interesting comments here. One of them is, if you make calls between X hour and X hour, X of points, and there's, literally, if you've got a set amount of hours a day that you can make calls, and there's just no calls in that time frame, what's a man to do?
Yeah, well, again, I think this is a very young man's perspective, woman's perspective in it, is saying that, if you're not able to make calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, then you're useless to the organization. Well, I work at night. So anything that I do is completely useless unless it's at 3 o'clock in the morning. Let's be a little more on a different side of it. Let's say you're a single mother, okay? And you have times from when your kids get off school to when you have to go to work. Well, you're going to spend time with your kids, but when you're off work, there's some time that maybe you want to invest in your organization. Well, that's 8 in the morning to 10 a.m.
Or while they're at school.
Is that useless?
Or while they're at school.
Yeah. I mean, don't be so myopic in viewing this. Cherish every single opportunity, no matter how long or how short someone has to contribute to your organization. And a contribution to the organization does not have to be making calls. That's my point of view. It just is. Now, in our case, there's some rewards and perks involved for people that are very active on the organization, and there's requirements for those rewards and perks. Well, then yes, there needs to be requirements and stipulations attached to it to be able to get the extra goodies. But to be a part of the organization, I don't care if it's 1 hour or 1 month or your entire year. I mean, just look at our roster, and I'm looking at our pension requirements. This is literally the span of calls that people have covered this year. Number one is almost 1,000 calls for the year. The very bottom of the list is 32.
Yeah.
That, you tell me who qualifies. That's impossible. Not to mention the guy that's number 32 on here. He's a manager at a Fortune 500 company and has access to hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations every year. But that's the guy you want to say, no, you're not cutting it. Come on, guys. Don't be so narrow-sighted on this.
The conversation there was steering to should those guys lose the ability to vote. I think that, yeah, maybe there is a requirement to vote that's based on participation of that, because some of those things that you're voting on have a bearing on the guys that are doing the work, right?
Sure. Now I will 100% agree with you on that.
And I think just because you don't have a vote doesn't mean you don't have an opinion, and that opinion can't be valid, right? Because there's a lot of guys that are on our, what do we call it, a support roster, kind of the non-active members that are just reserve members or whatever, that are, a lot of them are super knowledgeable guys with opinions that I'd value greatly. Now, they don't necessarily get a vote, but their opinions are very important to the organization. There's a ton of those guys. So I don't think just because you're not cutting them out completely, and don't do that. Don't cut them out completely. Still listen to those guys, because some of those guys have knowledge that's very important to you. So I scrolled down a little bit more, and I've been reading this story for a while about the Kentucky. Where is it? Kentucky City Fire Department cuts medical call volume by half. Have you read this one?
No, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So let me see if I can find the. I don't know which city it is, and in Kentucky, but they basically what they did is said, man, we're going to all these calls, these medical calls, that A, we're not needed at. B, they don't want us at. Let's cut that down to what's really relevant. Like, there's no ambulance available. It's priority one, on request. Just cut that down to more what we do in our organization, which is eliminate the help I can't poops out of the deal, and it literally cut their call volume in half.
Oh yeah, it's that's one thing that's unique about our organization is that, you know, pretty much universally it's about 90% medical and 10% fire, and I would argue that we're about 85% fire and about 15% medical, and that's how we set up long before I ever did. I mean, I had nothing to do with setting this up. We've always been a fire department, and our medical response is priority one, level 0, or as requested. Yeah. And all I can say is that on any given day, if we have 10 calls, there might be 3 or 4 medicals involved in there. Now, don't get me wrong. There's days where we have 10 medicals that we're toned to. That does happen, but realistically, we go to a lot more alarms, car accidents, and fires, literal fires, than we do medicals. So that's awesome for us. I'm glad to see that other organizations are kind of seeing the light on that. One thing that just drives me nuts, and of course cities are starting to back away from this, when they take that $2 million ladder truck and run the wheels off of it in 3 years because they keep going to medicals in it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. It just kills me when I see that. Or they'll send 4 apparatus to a Samsonite flyer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge waste of, and like this story, and I read the whole story on a different media outlet than Reddit, but basically they were either arriving to be canceled or canceled a block out for a large portion of the calls that they were running, right?
Right.
Or they were getting there to the call and there was literally no reason for them to be there. Like the patient's getting loaded into the back of the ambulance or whatever. There's not they fall outside of that true medical emergency. So we can debate what that true emergency is, but literally if the person meets you on the curb with their suitcase packed, you probably don't need a tower, right?
Or a squad, or an engine,
yeah,
or a brush truck, or you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where they kind of drew the line in that, rewrote their protocols, their dispatch protocols, and kind of geared that thing a different way. That department was not the EMS provider, so that makes a little bit of difference, right?
Right.
They were strictly first responding to what seemed to be a private care ambulance, so privatized ambulance service, AMR or somebody like that. And so those calls get routed through a couple different dispatch centers, and the one complaint was when it goes out, it takes it too long to get back, and then blah blah blah. But the reality is it's such a burden on the equipment, the manpower. I mean, if you got guys that are running 30 or 40 calls a day, 25 of them are garbage, then what are you really doing to your people?
Yeah, 30 years ago when there was a push to start running medicals, I get it. Fire departments are trying to justify their budgets. Justifying your budgets by increasing call volume has a cost, and not just physical or financial.
So I was around in the EMS days before fire first responded on a bunch of stuff, and I do remember that the big push was because of back injuries, right? So you had all these EMTs and paramedics that were hurting themselves because the patients got bigger. And so the answer was, well, we'll just get the fire department to come lift Fat Sally up, help us get her in there. Well, now the technology's moved past all that. There's technology to do that heavy lifting for us, right? You hit the button and it loads the cot in the ambulance all by itself. So other than they're in the floor and they're stuck in the floor and you got to get them from the floor to the stretcher, once they're on that stretcher, there's not much help needed. So if they walk to the stretcher, literally it's a push of a button these days. You know, there's not a whole heck of a lot of departments out there using manual cots anymore. That's kind of a thing of the past.
Yep.
What else you find on there?
I've got a really cool one. So there's I think I'll say this. There's a Swedish firefighter that's posting on Reddit and you can see that he has a big Swedish beard.
Yeah, Sven. Okay. It's got to be named Sven.
And he
Magnus
is pointing out that in his country, in his department, that they all have beards. And the way it works is that they throw their Nomex over their head, and even the chin strap, the face hole basically leaves the face. And then they put their SCBA mask over the Nomex, and it works just fine. Now, it's not a Scott or MSA air pack, I don't think, and on and on. The gear's different. The Nomex is specifically engineered for this, so anyone that's in eastern Montana hearing this, thinking this is a great idea, no. You got to remember their gear and everything's specifically made for this. Where I really want to go with this is the fact that the Europeans are so far ahead of the Americans in tech, fire science, tactics, philosophy, just about every single conceivable aspect in firefighting that we should be thoroughly embarrassed. And I know, oh my God, Jesus, it's the tradition. You dumb idiot. Come on, guys. Things have got to modernize. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to wear a ZZ Top beard now, okay? But there is nothing wrong with looking at other countries and other organizations and seeing what they're doing, and not to necessarily change it for the sake of change, but is it better?
Yeah, so that stems from a thread that was a week or so ago about a guy talking about a waiver for shaving because of his facial hair. He had a lot of problems with shaving, so he had to keep like some stubble or ingrown hairs, whatever.
Yeah, he'd just get bad breakout.
Yeah, I don't have that problem. I shave once a week whether I need to or not. So
I can tell you this is a pro shaving tip. I had to deal with this all the time because when I was flying, I was in tropical areas a lot. Getting a dab of Neosporin and rubbing it into your hands and wiping your face down with Neosporin like it's shaving balm, and I'm talking about a tiny amount because you're going to be greasy if you do too much. That'll actually really help eliminate the shaving bumps. Yeah. So for all you guys that do have to shave or want to shave, but you have hell with the shaving bump breakout. That is one thing I found, because I had to shave all the time in flying. And when you're literally in a jungle having to shave, this white loaf would break out immediately. And I found that using Neosporin really, really helped. Tiny amount, tiny drop.
Yeah. But the everybody in that thread wanted to quote the OSHA CFR, right? And part of me, I understand, and I get it. Like, you don't want the bad stuff in, but where we fail to think some of this through is that it's literally a positive pressure breathing apparatus, right?
Right.
So what's going to get in?
Nothing.
Nothing's going to get in.
You could dive into a pool with a 50-pound weight and sink to the bottom, and not a drop of water is going to come in.
Right.
Because it's positive pressure.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I know that's actually how that works. I tested that.
You tested it once?
Yeah. I wanted to actually see what would happen with the air pack. No, I was not wearing my bunker gear. Calm down, people. It was an old air pack. We wanted to see what would happen.
So I've seen the gold dredging guys will buy old air packs, and they'll use those to dredge gold as a diving outfit, basically. They just put the air pack on. They're more or less snorkel depth. They're just face under the water, but I've seen videos of that. But my point is that there's a difference between a respirator that's using some kind of filter media, whether it be for particulates, chemicals, or whatever, and a positive pressure breathing apparatus. There's a huge difference, and there's a difference in the quality of the seal. Now, granted, that leaky seal is going to cost you time, right? And that's totally important, and you should definitely understand that 30-minute bottle might get you 7 minutes if you're leaking, and that should be important to you. But you're not getting an exposure to anything worse than you would be with it perfectly sealed. That's the point I'm bringing to it. The failure of the seal, and I promise you, I've got a real narrow face and I sweat a lot, so about 37 seconds into doing real work, I lose my seal most of the time. I can't cinch that thing down tight enough as soon as I start sweating to keep it on me. So, there's really no difference between those two things. Find something else?
I'm seeing someone that's not a firefighter that was listening to a scanner, and there sounds like the department got toned to a pest incident at their own station. Let me glance through that.
Oh yeah, quick. I saw that. I didn't read it.
Only thing I can think of is that, they might have had like a wasp nest or raccoon or possibly feral cats. May have been a grizzly bear. I don't know where the department was at. Let's take a look here.
Yeah.
There's a leadership question. Not doing this post enough justice, but officers or who can relate to question, how do you guys manage different egos and personalities? Have a bigger ego and bigger personality and become a domineering... No, I'm kidding. That is the trick to being, I'd say a little bit an officer, but particularly as you move up the food chain. To try and keep the symbiotic relationship of all the different personalities and characters and dispositions of how do you get all those individuals to unify behind one task and ultimately do your best Wizard of Oz impersonation and lock arms and skip down the yellow brick road together.
So there's definitely some good conversation in this post, and I read it a few days ago or yesterday, I guess. But so one of the responses here, and we'll just blast through it right quick, talks about being upfront and honest. This is a pretty new answer to this, and I think those two things are truly beneficial. Like Don't tell somebody what they want to hear, whether they're below you or above you. Be honest about it. Be upfront about that stuff. And then he talks a little bit about, carrying your own weight and doing that. The other thing you want to do is you want to make your boss look good, right?
Ideally.
That's a good way to do it. I do like this response, though. Piss in every corner of the station to mark your territory and assert your dominance. I mean, that I could do that. And always be the type of firefighter that you'd want to manage. And when you do promote, remember that, because that's important. Leadership is different than managing in some aspects. And what's a good leader? What does it take to be a leader, Matt? One thing that it takes to be a leader.
A solid bank account.
Followers, right? Can't be a leader without followers. So if you're trying to be the leader and you have no followers, well, guess what? You're not a leader. It takes followers. So you have to know how to get people to get behind what you're doing and support your efforts, support the organization's efforts. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? And how you do that varies greatly. I do things different than somebody else might do them. I'm a big proponent of, I like to show the way sometimes, but sometimes I also like to push people out of their comfort zones and show them that they can show the way. And then that instills some confidence in them, and that generally makes them followers pretty quick.
You could, I'm going to bounce to another post, but it's the same thing. Or you could do what this guy did. Firefighter was charged with felony assault after reportedly choking another firefighter until unconscious. So domination.
Yeah.
That's you can do that. Not recommended, because there's probably an assault charge or at the minimum being fired, but I wouldn't worry about being fired versus the probably felony that you committed there.
Yeah. Well, and you also got to realize who's more liked in the firehouse, because the other 4 or 5 guys might turn on you pretty quick there too.
Let's see here. I'm floating down.
Probationary firefighter having trouble waking up for calls.
Oh, I did read that one.
Oh, poor
Man,
kid.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you, man. Get a really annoying alarm. I mean, if it's truly that big of a problem, maybe get one of your buddies to help make sure you're awake, or don't sleep in a bed and just sleep in a recliner at the station.
Yeah, or standing up.
Yeah.
Sleep in the back seat of the truck, and then at least you know you made the truck, right?
Well, here's the problem, and some of these statements in there, someone said, I think the kid even said, like, hey, I'll sleep in the bays. Well, technically, we're supposed to be cancer awareness and just generally the nastiness that's out in the bays. I really don't recommend that. I'd say just make sure your buddy throws a waffle iron at you. Set your alarm or whatever to the most annoying thing on the face of the earth, and sleep in a recliner.
And you've never really spent time in a career firehouse or a EMS station or somewhere where people are actually staying. So you always notice the ones that are scared to death that they're going to sleep through a call because they sleep in their clothes, with their shoes on, with the radio still strapped to their chest. They may or may not even turn the covers back. The pillow is optional. They're so afraid that they're going to miss the call that they make sleeping the most uncomfortable thing that they could possibly do. I've even seen guys never leave the recliner with all their stuff on just so that they're that much closer to the door in case they don't hear it right off the bat. They're not wasting time. For me, I'd have to sleep in the bathroom. That way I could get that pee out before I leave, right? But that's a different deal. Another one here is a curious auto technician. What resources, if any, are you provided with the safety shutoff of handling hybrids and EVs? That's a really good question. And if you're a firefighter and you don't know the answer to this question, you should probably get on the old Gargler and do a little research, because all the manufacturers are going to give you this information.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty easily found. But it's going to boil down to taking time to actually find what you need. The other thing that's out there, and shame on me, I cannot remember. There's an app out there
for this exact thing,
and it's free. I mean, generally a universal. The problem is it's not universal. Just orange cables. Be wary.
Yeah.
But if you're on an old Saturn, I think they're blue. But it really is. It's something that you need to spend personal time actually doing, the time, energy, and effort of the research, particularly to whatever's in your district.
So we had the advantage of having a Tesla technician on the department for a while, and he hooked us up with the training. They're Tesla, and I know Ford and Chevrolet, and they all do this same thing. They have divisions that train emergency responders, right? And some of this is hands-on live. Some of it's, in the case of the Tesla, it was a what do you call it, like a Zoom class where we all got together in the training room and talked to this guy via the computer, and he was in California. But they go through the specific things for their makes and models. There was a lot to learn in that little class, and it was probably 2-3 hours long. It wasn't excessive. It was a good training night of stuff to learn about Teslas and what to do and what not to do, and what different approaches you can take in fire and rescue situations. And the biggest thing that I took away from that whole class was, so you get to that EV, well, if the 84 Chevrolet pickup's running still, we pretty much know it because we can hear it, right? We can see the smoke coming out of the tailpipe. We feel the heat from the engine. Well, that Tesla doesn't make noise. So we don't know if it's going to, take off and go or not. We're not familiar enough with all the controls and whatnot inside of that vehicle that it could potentially just drive away. Unconscious driver or whatever, and puts their foot on the accelerator, and as we're moving them around trying to get them out, and they push the accelerator, and then all of a sudden we're all ran over, and that's a bad day. So that resource of that training is super important, and it's not hard to get. It's free of charge. It's just a scheduling thing. And I've done some similar stuff with Ford when the Ford hybrids kind of started coming out back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when the Escape hybrid and some of those started becoming popular things, and got some Ford specific training at that time.
Yeah, it really does. It's going to boil down to, I wish there was some like silver bullet I could say on that, but it is. You got to put a little time, energy, and effort into some research, and reach out to the manufacturers, because there's a lot of resources for you out there. There's this kind of an interesting one. I'm surprised I didn't see this, because I would have responded to this. So the title of this one's Doubting Myself, and I'm just going to read it real quick. I'm finally in academy and feel like I'm failing every single time. I can tell some people don't like me, and while everyone is encouraging, I can't help but feel I have no idea what I'm doing. Honestly, I just feel weak and stupid. I want to pursue this, but my doubts are clouding my brain every day. Okay, so you're new. That's why you're in academy. So you shouldn't know anything. That's why you're there. Okay? Don't quite be so damn hard on yourself. Jesus, that's a pretty heavy cross that you're bearing yourself there. Be open. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You always hear this statement of asking stupid questions. Okay. And there's a bunch of dumb responses to asking stupid questions.
I've got a great one. There are no stupid questions. There's just stupid people.
That's a common one.
Yeah.
The one that I've been telling people recently is if you ask a stupid question and you get an answer, you're no longer stupid. So the more stupid questions you ask is the more knowledge you're gaining, and eventually you're going to need to stop asking questions because you're going to actually have a clue what the hell's going on. I think this individual's just being way too hard on themselves, and they kind of clue in on it while everyone's being encouraging. Well, don't take it so personal. Again, it's an academy. You're trying to learn. There's nothing wrong with having doubts. The kicker to that is what you need to do is find some confidence. Take small steps. Do something that's actually new to you, learn it, and take encouragement and confidence in the fact that you learned something. Don't doubt it. Again, you're new. There's nothing. It's kind of nice to hear that maybe you're not overconfident, but in this case, I would say that you're actually on the negative side of being underconfident. So, I mean, generally, I would say that you're in the right direction. You're where you want to learn. You know this is what you want to do. Stop being so damn hard on yourself and just, for lack of better words, read the Invictus Prayer and find some fortitude through that.
Well, in a world of instant gratification, right? So that's where we are. So, you expect that everything's going to be instant and we're going to do phenomenal at it, and the participation trophy has led to some of that, right? Well, these kids may or may not have ever actually failed at anything in their entire life or seen anything as a failure. Well, what is a failure? It's a first attempt at learning, right?
Right.
So, they don't know how to take something that didn't go as perfect as they expected it to in their mind and turn that into a learning experience to push themselves forward to do better the next time. Some of these skills that you see some of these guys doing that have been firefighters for 10, 15, 20 years, they didn't pick them up the first time they did it. They worked at it, and they did lots of training to get to the point where they are. There's no comparison. Like, you can't start running tomorrow and decide you're going to compare yourself to the person that won the Boston Marathon.
Right.
There's just no comparison. You can't put that comparison in your mind. And I see a lot of young people that struggle with that. Like, they're literally putting themselves against the Olympians and realize you're not. They've trained for years and decades and done that forever to be that good, not to mention abilities and skills and all that stuff.
And on the flip side, like in this particular case, honestly, I feel weak and stupid. Well, quite frankly, those are two things you can both work on. Let's say that you are lacking in knowledge and that you're not the strongest guy or gal out there. Those are things you can work on. You can enhance your own knowledge, and you can do a lot to handle where you might be quote unquote weak. And you don't have to be 6'6" and 350-pound Mr. Olympia to increase your techniques and practice things to make them 10 times easier for you and serviceable in the field. Because I can guarantee you, Fire Academy, they're going to show everyone how to throw a ladder. Well, if you're 7.5 feet tall, you might end up not being able to carry the ladder the same way as your partner that's 5 feet tall.
You definitely can't carry it with them, right?
Okay. I mean, I know that's kind of an absurd example, but there's lots of things out there where you might have to tailor a specific task that gets the job done, but is tailored to your physical abilities.
Well, and I think we do we do some disservice to these new guys when we teach them stuff, because we teach them these techniques that are in the book, that are the technique that's recognized as the proper technique, but we don't teach them about leverage, right? We don't teach them about how to use their mass and their leverage and how to work that to their advantage. We teach them to bend at the knees, and use their lower back in a jerking, twisting motion when they lift something, but we don't explain to them how to use the leverage of getting something momentum or anything like that. We expect them to just figure that out on their own, and the reality is that that's kind of the only way to learn some of that stuff, is figure it out on your own. The old saying of, you want to be good at something, do it 10,000 times, right? I doubt there's anybody out there that's throwing a ladder 10,000 times out beside the station so that they can get perfect at it, but a few hundred times is probably a realistic number. Like, it's not going to happen instantly. None of that stuff's going to happen instantly. And I know we're preaching to the choir because, the likelihood that this kid's going to be listening to this is, fairly small, but
There's a good chance I'm probably going to just send them a message.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll just send them the podcast and tell them, like, hey, we were literally stumbled across that. In fact, we might just do that right now. So you keep talking, and I'm going to send them a message.
So that is a disservice to those young guys, because some of that stuff just takes a while to learn. I mean, you don't go into paramedic school, do the classroom portion, watch the video, and then they cut you loose on a real live human patient, right? That's not the way it works. And it's the same thing with no matter what it is, ventilation, fire attack, any of those tasks that you're doing. It takes time, energy, and effort to learn them. And that's why you see the progression of, when you start out, you're learning how to pull hose and load hose and unload hose and attack the fire. And the guy that's been there 15 years is learning how to read the smoke and run a scene with 100 firefighters on it and do some of those other tasks that are even beyond what you could even comprehend to know at that early stages of learning.
Right. Well, and again, I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, don't be so dang hard on yourself.
No,
you got to
can't.
start somewhere. I mean, I've seen huge guys that are very physically capable do something technically wrong, and it absolutely eat them alive, and vice versa.
And I've seen guys like me. I've taken a 35-foot extension ladder off of the side of the engine, which it was over my head, right? The side of the engine's really tall. Taking the 35-foot ladder off of the truck by myself, carried it to the house and leaned it up through that ladder by myself. That, at the time, I probably weighed 150 pounds soaking wet. That should be a physical impossibility. And I'm not thinking, I'm not saying that adrenaline doesn't play a factor in that, because I've also carried the jaws, the hose, and the pump all at the same time with a giant set of Hamatro rescue tools. And that's probably 200 pounds, and I weighed about 150 pounds and packed it across the bar ditch into the wrecked car. And adrenaline probably helped with that, because I couldn't put it back in the truck. But some of that stuff just comes with the territory. And one of my favorite quotes is from Henry Ford, right? Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably correct. And I drill this into my guys' heads all the time. Like, you can't impart those negative thoughts of you can't do it, or it can't be done, or it's impossible, or any of that stuff into your head at any point in time. I don't look at tasks like that as they're impossible or hard. I'll accept the fact that something's going to be difficult, right? But I'm not going to accept the fact that I can't do it. Like, if I can't figure out a way to make it happen through my efforts, or whoever I can commandeer to come help me make this happen, then I see that as the failure, right? You've got to keep that positive. The failure is that I let the negative take over. and you got to keep the positive thoughts in that. So, did you get your post done?
Yeah, I sent a message to him. Yeah. Now here's another one. This is actually really up my wheelhouse. And I wish I'd have seen this. I guess I was actually working that night, and I should have caught this one. This is a funding question. I'm not going to go through the post on this one. The biggest thing I will tell anyone is, particularly on the volunteer side, and it's applicable to the career departments too, funding is always an issue. You need to always be working on that. And what we have here is it's a rural area, 3 towns. Their contracts haven't been negotiated in a while. And it sounds like there's also some political stuff going on between the department and, a commissioner or a trustee or board member or whatever. And it sounds like that you need to do a little due diligence, get back, go in there, work with the trustee, get in board member, commissioner, whatever they are, and get working with them, get some clarification, get them working for you again, and also do a little work there in your town and get the word out there about where your funding's at and where you need to actually be at. There's a lot of work that you can do politically on something like that. That's quite frankly, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but it's easy work. It's not fun by any means, but that's easy work. Just put the time, energy, and effort into it.
Well, here's one for a 1,000-foot pole for you. Miami Fire Rescue Lieutenant caught on camera punching handcuffed man on stretcher. Yeah, there's your 100-foot pole. You can poke at that a little bit. I saw the video.
Yeah, I saw the video also. All I can say is this isn't just the fire service. This is anywhere really in the real world. The fact of the matter is that we're not marauding barbarians. The day of Mongo's smash doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist today. And guess when it didn't exist? 1980. And it didn't exist in 1950. And it didn't exist in 1900. There is things that you are going to do that are going to get you in trouble. Yeah. And if you don't have enough self-control to be really mad and be able to maintain your composure, well, maybe the luxury and privilege of being on a fire department career or volunteer just isn't for you. But that felony assault charge is.
Yeah, that's going to get you. So evidently the guy spits in his face, right? Well, we probably all or most of us have had that happen at 1 or 2 times in the past, or 20 or 30. And yeah, there's ways to deal with that, right? You put a mask on them, you do whatever, you go write it up, and maybe the cops will see it your way, and maybe they'll file assault on that person. That's a hard thing to work out too. I mean, I had a patient one time pull a knife and try to stab myself and my partner. They weren't strapped to a cot. They were standing up in the room at that point, and they got hit with the stretcher as I shoved it towards them to run out the door. I kind of assaulted back, but I consider the knife a much more greater threat than the loogie, right?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. That's infuriating. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been quote-unquote spit on, but I've had a meth head bite into me, literally, like a pit bull, and then at least they didn't let go. That was awesome. But on the flip side of that, I didn't pull out a meat cleaver and tag them, and I didn't throw a knee into their head. So I don't know, it's all I can say is don't do that.
Yeah.
I think your story's a little more of like literally immediate threat to kind of, okay, fine. If you're under duress, literally.
Well, yeah, there's no arguing.
There's
that
no
somebody's
argument there.
trying to stab you. You do what you got to do. And,
Yeah.
and retreat happened to be the
option.
answer at that point in time, right? There was nothing else to do but retreat. But the stretcher just became I'm going to slow this guy down.
Now, see, where you would have gotten in trouble is if you had admitted that you went back to the box and got a ketamine bomb.
Yeah.
Then that's where the problem's at. So just because the highly altered individual that's not in their right mind spit on you, and then you turn around and lay into them, I don't know if that's the solution. Don't get me wrong. Every single person thought about that. I'm not saying you're not thinking about it. And the rules of the Catholic Church don't apply here. Just because you thought it doesn't mean that you did it.
So in that conversation that followed this guy trying to kill us, because that's how I saw it. He's got a knife. He tried to kill us. So I'm got the sheriff's deputy there. I'm giving a statement, and he's like, "Well, do you think it was because they were an altered mental status, or do you think it was?" Well, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, presented as an altered mental status. So he's like, "Well, if it's altered mental status, there's very little chance that any charges you file are going to stick, right? Because they're going to basically claim insanity."
So you get to decide how vindictive you are.
Yeah, so it didn't work out. I mean, the person got away. It's fine. Whatever. It just mark that address into the address of places where you send the cop in first instead of going in there. But definitely that. We touched that one as close as we were going to touch it.
Yeah, I just, all I'm going to say is that I don't encourage you hitting any of your patients, particularly while they're strapped down to a cot.
Yeah, the strap to the cot deal probably pushes that a little bit too far. And I'm not saying to not protect yourself and not, like if somebody's coming at you, by God, do your best to subdue them. Like protect yourself if that's what it comes to. Or retreat to your box and lock the doors, right? Drive away. But don't take the defenseless person strapped to a cot and assault them. So this one catches me. Holiday radio transmissions. This guy's talking about, Christmas poems, and is this a lost tradition, and people putting holiday messages, happy Thanksgiving out over the radio. And I think that kind of is a lost tradition because the scanner's a lost object, right?
Right.
So when I grew up, everybody in town had a scanner in their house because they were listening to what was going on. Well, how many houses have you been in the last 10 years that had a scanner in them?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, it's virtually zero. I mean, the number's zero. So if you're just doing that for your entertainment, okay, do it. It's fine. But if you're doing it for a general public thing, which is what I would consider that stuff was done for in the past, with Scannerland, it was just a community outreach thing. I will tell you that when I started, and it kind of died and lost deal, and I don't know if it's because there's just wasn't as many of them, but when people would have babies, when my wife had my daughter, there was a page went out to the department to let them know that my daughter is in this world now, and like a birth announcement. And that was a pretty cool kind of tradition we had.
Technically, we do that if I know that, like, and I don't always know, but, if one of our guys has a kid, and we know, like, it doesn't really work a week later because by that point, again, I'm the last person to know and everyone knows. But if we know the day of, we'll send out messages on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to do, and it's a tradition we had where I was from, and it was just kind of you're a proud papa at that moment anyway, so it's just another proud thing that you see that or hear that come across the radio, that's a good tradition. I don't know that doing the other makes a lot of sense anymore, just not with the way the communications equipment is now. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I hate to say it this way, but it's just the truth. It sounds like Because I've actually didn't know that was a thing as far as like the quote-unquote Christmas message or poem or anything like that went across Scannerland. I hate to say it, but I think that's one of the good traditions that just faded with time and technology. And that's something that obviously probably should have been held on to, and it was lost.
So here's one that's near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
Help settle an argument on fan placement to vent smoke out of a small apartment, please.
I remember seeing that, and I'm like, man, that's a tactics question. There's like 500 things that go into how I'm going to do positive pressure ventilation.
So I positive pressure ventilation. That is the key to the whole deal, right? So very few of us still have a negative pressure fan on the truck. That's kind of a, there's still some out there, and they still make them, and they're in this SuperVac catalog that I'm got sitting in front of me. And you can still buy a negative pressure fan. And those of us that remember those, it went in the doorway and it blew out. So it's blowing out, sucking from the inside and blowing out. And that's the way it was designed to work. Well, that positive pressure fan is not designed to work that way. And granted, with the new battery ones, you can still accomplish that. But I'm more particular at a fire scene about that fan placement. So I always tell them in rookie school, if I show up and you've got that PPV stuck inside the doorway, I'm going to find you and I'm going to beat you with the fan. Because that's not how it works. And the way that you learn that is you use the smoke machine and use the non-hazardous smoke. You smoke something up and you set that fan up in some different ways, and you do it as a group and you figure out how it actually works, because it works a lot better if you get that thing 5 or 6 feet back and you've got your cone and you check the air around the doorway and you open a smaller opening on the opposite end of the structure, and the way that it kind of was figured out to work. Now, I'm not saying that it won't work the other way. It's just not near as effective the other way. And sometimes, though, you may or may not want that fan to blow that much air into that structure, because you might blow the paintings off the wall, let's say, or the pictures or the curtains or whatever. So you need to figure out what works, and I encourage everybody to get the smoke machine. And if you don't have one, wait until Walmart puts them on sale after Halloween and buy you one, and smoke up the office in the station or something, your training facility, whatever you got. Get the fans out and figure out how it works, and learn something, because you'll actually learn a lot of helpful stuff if you'll do a little bit of experimenting like that, right?
And your full answer means you're not a truckie.
Yeah. Is that what you learned from that post?
That's what I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, like I said, it's tactics. Because, again, you get to a truckie, he's going to tell you, go from the top. Every single time, period. End of story. Take the top of the building off.
Oh, I'm all for that. Yeah, no, I come from, you stub your toe, we'll ventilate the roof. Like, having a heart attack, get a crew to the roof.
Yeah, there's I'm a positive pressure guy. Just, it works. And not from a roof either. Let's see. I've seen a couple of good ones. I've been bouncing past them. I should have.
Well, go back.
Should have stopped. I'm going to keep digging down deeper into the dumpster fire, because, by God, there is gold in the bottom of this. Let's look here. The question is, from the old hats here, do you feel like there's been an increase in the amount of firefighters who wrap their entire identity around their job? I mean, yeah. You can say that that's a consequence of just social media. Social media has a tendency to highlight the individual more than than, we'll say, the station or the department. But that's a cultural shift thing. I don't know if you'll ever truly get away from that, but you could say that firefighters today are the cowboys of the 1850s. It's just kind of for lack of better words, it's a noble, respected, glorious task. There's always going to be some form of clout chasing with it. It's not necessarily a young man problem either.
No, that all ages apply to that. I'll dive off into that, the whole what you just said about social media and highlighting the individual. I think part of the problem that we see with social media and social media policies and the approach to social media is that so many departments don't actually embrace social media for what it can be, and they shun it so far away, then it's up to those individuals put stuff out there that they shouldn't put out there most of the time in an effort to get some notoriety to themselves or their organization. And what probably should be happening is the department should be posting what the department deems appropriate, and those folks should just be tagging each other in it, right? To where it's not necessarily the wrong thing going out there. And I think we do way too much trying to perceive ourselves as perfect, and I'm not saying that we should post all our failures out there, and we do have failures, and I think a lot of times the general public will take care of that for us, right?
Right.
But I do think that the wrong images can be posted sometimes. There is some sensitivity to people, sensitivity to situations, like, the story's going to come out, and you post a picture of something in the background with the house fire in the background, and then 3 days later it comes out that was some kind of insurance fraud deal or something that's implicating somebody. Then that may have not been the picture that needed to hit social media.
Right. Yeah, there's sometimes you can get some clouded judgment in there, and we have to deal with that occasionally. We'll get some whopper social media stuff going, and you got to run around with your baby seal bat and kind of club that down pretty quick, because it can get pretty spicy pretty fast. The kind of the positive side of that is that, well, not that scenario, but if you do have people that are active in social media, I don't necessarily discourage it, because all it's going to do is help garner more attention to the cause.
Yeah.
So,
maybe work with them to get the appropriate things on there. I would tell you, if you're going to post a picture of yourself, and this is just my advice, if you're going to post a selfie on a call, put the truck in the background, right? Maybe a compartment door or something that's not necessarily displaying the department, but the pump panel's usually a good place, right? Pump panel doesn't usually have, whatever fire department written all over it in big letters. It's just a pump panel. But people that would see that picture would recognize that's a fire truck. Things like that are probably pretty safe bets that you can get by with doing some of that. Definitely don't put the wrecked vehicles and the dead bodies and all that good stuff in the background of your selfie. Find something that's innocuous that doesn't necessarily single out where it is or what it is, and your caption can be appropriately worded.
Here's a kind of an interesting one. What is something unique that only your department has or does? I know of one nozzle that we have.
Yeah.
That no one has ever seen this damn thing, and They kind of lift an eyebrow when they see it. We call it a big poly, and it's basically a gigantic smoothbore nozzle that's pre-connected off the top of the truck. That's usually a 2.5 or a 3-inch line. And the best place to use it is garage fires or mobile home fires. It's not intended to be like a fully long-term use nozzle. You bounce off the truck, roll out, and deploy the nozzle for 10 to 15 seconds. And the intent is to get this big glut of water that penetrates, and you just dump a massive amount of water and try and get as much conversion as you possibly can out of it. And it's pretty much based off the principle of big fire, big water. Jesse, do you have anything there out of me that was a kind of a one-off?
Away there. Anywhere out of my other department that was a one-off? No. We pretty stayed pretty common in all our tactics and stuff. The one thing we did have was a 5,000-gallon tanker truck. And
5K, huh?
yeah, a tractor-drawn tanker.
Okay.
And we'd go to large wildland fires, and when everybody didn't want to spend money on foam, we'd dump 5 gallons of foam right in the top of the tanker and give them foam whether they wanted it or not. Interesting tactic that worked. Here's you a good one. Texas to California
Reciprocity?
Yes, that one. Can't spit that out process. So you want to know my question?
Okay.
When everybody's leaving California for Texas, why are you going the wrong way?
I thought I saw that post. I thought it was California to Texas.
No, this is Texas Academy. Yeah. Maybe it is. Maybe I read that wrong.
Okay, yeah, I thought I saw that. I thought it was California to Texas.
Oh, there's you a good one. How does your department disconnect power at structure fires? Trash hook, right?
Yeah, standing in water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pro tip there: don't literally take the baby seal club and swing it at the electrical meter.
It makes pretty sparks.
Two answers to this. One, don't. Two, if you have the proper training, tools, and equipment, then proceed.
Yeah.
That's a training question, and if you haven't been trained on it, then don't do it. It's really that simple. Oh, and pro tip, you can't just disconnect a commercial electric meter.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I had a guy from a utility one time. It's a big utility in Texas, and they had a little chunk of service area that was kind of removed from everything else that they serviced. Just kind of this little island of service area, probably had 100 or 200 customers in this area. And, you call and he'd have to drive hours to get there because there's no one there. And I asked him what they wanted us to do about that, because we really can't wait 2 or 3 hours for you to get here to turn the power off to go do what we need to do sometimes. And he was like, yeah, I don't care. Shoot the fuse, cut the pole down, whatever you think you need to do to make it happen, just make it happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, literally.
Well, so what'd you end up doing?
Just call a different utility to come.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. His answer was he didn't care, so, we had a good enough relationship with another co-op and just got that co-op to tend to their stuff when we needed shutdowns.
So while you were talking about that and kind of the version of that story, I happened to stumble into back when that airplane flew into the power utility pole on the East Coast. And this, it's electricity, but The point is that you're on scene, something weird's happening, it's new, it's unknown, you're untrained for it, it's just weird. And an airplane flying and hanging off of a high transmission line would rank very high in the weird category. I realize that the individual might be very badly injured. That is not the time to cowboy it. There is many, many, many factors at play here, including electricity and gravity.
Yeah.
So...
And avgas. 100 low lead. Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are times when you need to say, wait, and call for help.
Right.
And that's your story perfectly plays into that, where it's like, no, that's not a solution. And you call someone else.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to armchair quarterback that plane rescue, victim rescue out of the plane that was 100 feet in the air stuck in a transmission line. I think they did a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
And it was amazing. And as far as I'm concerned, what they did was beyond reasonable and well within safe practices. But there was, I can assure you, you could even call El Jefe Grande and he'd be like, what? Hold on. I got to call someone else. Because that little question got marched uphill really quick. And I'm willing to bet, I could be very wrong, but I'm more than willing to bet the guy that they called that thought would maybe have the answer, he's like, what? Hold on, I got to call someone else.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the heart of that answer is going to lie in the power line company.
Well, yeah, they're the only ones with the tools, equipment, and expertise to deal with the power lines. The airplane's, relatively simple at that point, right? Hopefully, if it hung up there for an hour, most of the fuel leaked out of it by that point in time.
Yeah, I did see that they're lucky that it wasn't too cold that night because that transmission line going down, they had to, I think, blackout. God, what was the service area? 180,000 homes?
Some crazy amount like that.
Yeah, if you ever stumble into the weird, unknown, just don't know what's going on for the scenario, start calling. And I don't care how small your little itty-bitty department is. You could be exceedingly rural, exceedingly small. Your main thing is wildland fires and some medical. That's fine. You're going to get the weird out there too. Make some phone calls. I mean, I know it's not necessarily the best thing in the world for the immediate comfort of the patient or survival sometimes, but you can't just dive off into something that you're really not prepared or equipped for and have no real understanding of the full effect.
Yeah, because a pile of dead firefighters under a plane and some power lines is probably not the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some experience in some industrial, like chemical plant type stuff, and I can tell you from that experience that literally when you get there, the best thing you can do is find out who's the smartest person there, right? The plant manager, the engineer, whoever, the plant engineer, somebody that can tell you all these things that you need to know and what there is important for us not to destroy with an axe and what doesn't matter that we destroy it with an axe, because there's probably things that, pressurized lines, whatever, that can get you in a lot of trouble. So we'd go to this one particular plant on a fairly consistent basis, usually twice a year, for usually a 10 or 12 hour event for a fire. And one of the times that we went there, we've got the plant personnel and you literally just grab them by the flipper and take them over there and pick somebody out that's about their size and tell them, here, give that guy your gear. This is what an air pack is. Come on, you're going to show us this, right? Well, we're 8 or 10 hours into this event that's just kicking our butts. We've drained the water tower in town. If you've never drained the water tower, you should consider doing it, because it really wreaks havoc on your town. There's boil water notices, and the water department gets really mad at you, and the mayor is really upset. It's a great time. You should do it. And so we drain the water tower. We're doing all this stuff, and we're putting water on this thing that's a reverse thermal oxidizer.
Okay.
So it takes the nasty stuff from the plant, burns it at like 2,000 degrees, and ejects it out of a stack where it's no longer hazardous. It's just the byproducts of whatever it was. This case, it's like phenol and formaldehyde-based resins. And we're putting water on this thing. They've got a company coming in, bringing CO2 cylinders, and they're replacing the CO2 cylinders on the suppression system in it, and immediately dumping these CO2 cylinders in it, and it's not losing ground. It's still glowing red. It's still hot. We're not able to do anything with it. The moment we stop putting water on it, it's back to glowing red. Well, we're 9 or 10 hours into this, and the guy that was supposed to be the really smart one there, that was the plant engineer, is just running around like a chicken with his head cut off, can't figure out what's going on. Well, the day shift shows up, right? Day shift supervisor goes, "Oh, look, y'all never turned the gas off."
Nice.
Yeah.
I've been on one fire where you just described, I was, God, what was that? Some sort of compressor station. Something bad happened there, and there was literally jets of fire shooting out of all of different places in there. And eventually, company rep shows up, and he pulls out blueprints, and he starts pointing at things that we need to turn off. And I looked at him and laughed. I'm like, I'm not turning that off. That guy's standing next to you. We've been sizing him up to you for the last 30 minutes. His gear will fit you. Don't worry. You can come with us. See, because he was he was telling us
over there.
Yeah, the 37 valves over there, if you spin any of those, they're all going to kill you. You have to spin the 38th valve, and it's hidden. And it's like, no, you're coming with us, dummy. What? Yes. Don't worry. You'll be just as safe as us. If anything happens, you'll be the first to know, like us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's always an encouraging conversation when you get to have it.
Oh,
then
yeah.
There's other companies where the guy just like Kung Fu Panda rolls off in there, and you're like, hey, he should have at least like held a sock over his nose before he ran off into that building.
Yeah, full of chlorine or whatever it is.
Well, we've been going a little while, and I actually kind of like this randomness thread, just finding things on Reddit.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring this back.
This might be a regular occurrence.
Yeah. So, again, it's the end of the year. We had a great year. I hope everyone else had a really good year. We even had a handful of questions. That was nice. And other than that, I think I'm ready to sign off for the evening. How about you?
I'm good for that.
Okay. Guys, we appreciate your time, energy, and effort. Somehow or another, we actually grew this year, which is actually pretty incredible considering. If you ever do have anything for us, please send it to us. It's we actually do dive off into the handful of things that have been sent to us.
Yep. There's definitely responses there.
Other than that, you can always find us at It Tastes Like Burning. And those are a whole bunch of different monikers and add-ons and whiz-wheels and subreddits and tweets and Gmails and things that you can always find us at also and send us questions. Other than that, appreciate it and have a good year.
Good night.